In an era of hyperconnectivity, where viral algorithms dictate our collective rhythm, from the synchronized silence of the mannequin challenge to the global flood of Spotify, Wrapped, there exists a distinct anomaly. While the tribe performs, you simply watch. You scroll past. Silent, detached, perhaps even instinctively repulsed. To the outside observer, this refusal looks like arrogance or apathy. But behavioral science reveals a far more complex reality hidden within your neural architecture. You aren't just stubborn. Your brain is engaging in a sophisticated, ancient defense mechanism that the majority of the population suppresses. Stay with me, because if you believe your resistance is just a personal preference, you are about to discover a profound, perhaps unsettling truth about how your mind is actually wired. Part 1. The Neuroscience of Resistance. To understand why you recoil when a viral trend sweeps the globe, we must first look at the cognitive architecture of compliance. When the collective voice of society pushes a specific behavior, whether it's downloading a new app or adopting a slang term, most brains interpret this as a social signal to synchronize. It is a safety mechanism, but for the trend resistor, the brain decodes this signal differently. It does not perceive an invitation, it perceives a threat. Psychologists have defined this phenomenon as psychological reactance. This is not merely a personality quirk or a display of stubbornness. It is a sophisticated, visceral defense mechanism triggered whenever an individual feels their behavioral freedom is being eliminated or threatened. When the external environment screams, everyone is doing this, your brain's amygdala and prefrontal cortex enter a state of fight-back mode. The ubiquity of the trend doesn't validate it for you. Rather, the more you see it, the more it feels like coercion. Consider the psychology of restriction. It is the same neural pathway that triggers a desire to stay up late simply because someone ordered you to sleep, or makes a forbidden cookie taste exponentially better than one freely given. We are evolutionarily wired to protect our agency. For the reactor, a trending topic feels like a microaggression against that autonomy, a tiny suffocating attack on the self. But the resistance runs deeper than just protecting freedom. It is about the preservation of the self. Research indicates that individuals with a high need for uniqueness experience genuine psychological distress when they perceive themselves as too similar to the herd. The trending activity is not just unappealing, it is existentially threatening. You can visualize it biologically. It is as if your identity has its own immune system, and the viral trend is recognized as a foreign pathogen. Your refusal to participate is the antibodies kicking in to neutralize the virus of homogeneity. Part 2. The Hipster Paradox and the two archetypes. This leads us to a fascinating cognitive trap, often whimsically termed the Hipster Paradox. You might ask, isn't the very act of avoiding a trend, in itself, a trend? The answer is a resounding mathematical yes. In 2014, mathematicians successfully modeled this phenomenon, uncovering a tragic irony. When a critical mass of individuals attempts to diverge from the norm in the exact same way, they inevitably converge into a new uniform. They become identical in their desperate pursuit of difference. However, to truly understand the psychology of resistance, we must surgically separate the population into two distinct behavioral archetypes. They may look identical from the outside, both refusing to dance on TikTok or ignoring the latest streaming sensation, but their internal neural drivers are polar opposites. Type 1, the Contrarian. For this group, resistance is not a preference. It is a performance. The Contrarian's entire identity is constructed on a foundation of opposition. Their psychology is, ironically, entirely dependent on the mainstream. Show them a popular phenomenon, and their brain immediately scans for flaws, not because they genuinely dislike it, but because they are compelled to reject what the majority accepts. They are not free. They are essentially controlled by trends, just in reverse. They are shadows, and shadows cannot exist without the object they mimic. Type 2, the authentic non-participant. This is a far rarer breed. These individuals operate on a completely different psychological wavelength. They do not resist trends to prove a point. They simply fail to register them as significant data. Their decision-making process is profoundly internally motivated, derived strictly from personal values and genuine interest, totally decoupled from the social hierarchy. The distinction is crucial. The contrarian looks at the crowd and thinks, "I must do the opposite." The authentic non-participant looks at the crowd and thinks, "Nothing at all." They are functionally immune to the social pressure that drives the market. While the contrarian fights the current, the non-participant is already on dry land, wondering why everyone else is getting wet. Part 3. Evolutionary survival. This brings us to a fundamental evolutionary paradox. If human survival was historically predicated on deep tribal cohesion, on the absolute necessity of sticking together to fend off predators and share resources, why did natural selection fail to eliminate the outlier? Why does this specific neural wiring, which seemingly rejects the safety of the group, persist in our gene pool? The answer requires us to reframe the nonconformist not as a social defect, but as a critical biological imperative. Trend resistors were not glitches in the system. They were, in fact, humanity's survival insurance. Consider the mechanics of an ancient tribe through the lens of game theory. If every single member of the group followed the collective consensus without question, chasing the mammoth to the left, simply because the majority voted to do so, the tribe became vulnerable to a single, catastrophic point of failure. If the herd was wrong, the entire lineage ended. Perfect unity in a hostile environment is actually a death sentence. If everyone gets excited about the same food source, the same hunting ground, or the same territory, you create immediate internal resource scarcity. Competition spikes. Nothing is left. Nature, in its infinite wisdom, diversified our decision-making algorithms to prevent this collapse. When the consensus led the tribe to a popular watering hole that eventually dried up, it was the lone dissenter. The individual who looked at the group felt that instinctive pull of resistance and walked the other way who had already discovered the backup water source. The group survived not because of their unity, but because of their diversity of thought. This is not merely a philosophical observation. It is rooted in our molecular structure. There is compelling evidence connecting this behavior to specific novelty-seeking genes. Most notably, the DRD47R variant, often poetically termed the wanderer gene. This genetic marker is linked to both high-risk behavior and a predisposition to go against social norms. These were the individuals chemically compelled to leave the warmth of the fire. They were the ones who looked at the mountain range blocking the horizon, the boundary that everyone else respected as the end of the world, and felt an urge to see what was on the other side. Sometimes, they found new lands and resources that saved the tribe. Sometimes, they found bears. But without this biological drive to resist the status quo, humanity would have never expanded beyond its first valley. Part 4. The happiness equation. So, does this neural autonomy translate to a better life? The scientific literature presents us with a conflicting, yet almost poetic contradiction. On one side of the equation, the data suggests that trend resistors report significantly higher levels of satisfaction with their life choices. They are physiologically immune to the fear of missing out because they are not performing for an invisible audience. There is a profound, quiet power in living by an internal compass. When they make a purchase or adopt a habit, it is an act of intention, not imitation. However, biology demands a toll. We are, fundamentally, tribal primates wired for belonging. Trends, as aggravating as they may appear to the analytical mind, serve as the connective tissue of modern socialization. They create shared languages, cultural touchstones, and collective moments. To strictly opt out of the mechanism is, inevitably, to opt out of the connection. That subtle isolation you feel when a conversation shifts to a cultural phenomenon you ignored, that is not just awkwardness. It is an evolutionary alarm bell. We evolved in groups of 150, where shared knowledge was the currency of survival. This leads us to a critical insight from a pivotal 2019 study. Researchers found that the highest metrics of life satisfaction are found neither in extreme adoption nor in complete stubborn resistance. The psychological sweet spot is moderate participation. It is the ability to be selective to engage with the tribe when the activity genuinely resonates with your soul, and to stand apart when it does not. Happiness, it seems, is not about building a wall against society, but about installing a gate. Part 5. The uncomfortable truth. This brings us to the final, perhaps most uncomfortable realization. Many who believe they are authentic non-participants are, in reality, disguised contrarians who have built an entire personality around negation. If your immediate reflex upon seeing a popular phenomenon is to label it as basic or sheep mentality, you are not liberated from the trend. You are defined by it. You become a shadow, and shadows, by definition, require an object to cast them. If the object moves, you move. You are still tethered to the very thing you claim to despise. True psychological agency is not the automatic rejection of the popular. It is the total indifference to popularity as a metric. It is the capacity to listen to Taylor Swift without irony, or to wear Crocs simply for their utility, completely unconcerned with their cultural cachet. The ultimate litmus test is this. If the entire world suddenly stopped doing the thing you currently refuse to do, would you still refuse it? If the answer is no, you have been performing all along. Ultimately, those who never join trends are not intellectually superior, nor are they boring. They simply operate on a different neural schematic. While some brains are high-frequency receivers for social signals and community cohesion, others run strictly on internal settings, personal value, genuine curiosity, and solitary logic. The conflict only arises when we mistake different wiring for superior character.